Welcome back. This is the Technology-Supported Collaboration Mini-Course Lecture 6, Technology Support for Collaboration. I'm Joe Constant, joined by Gary Olson. We're here for the second half of this mini-course as we look at solutions that will help teams overcome some of the challenges, some of the risk factors associated with collaboration at a distance and, frankly, across disciplines. So let's talk first there about how technology can help in supporting collaboration. There's obviously a lot of different things technology can do. What are the ones where it provides the most bang for the buck?
Well, if you talk about communication, obviously the telephone, video conferencing, online conferencing, Skype, Google Hangout, things like that, email, chat systems, all these are quite powerful modes of communication and can be very useful in their own way. I mean, we often talk about you and I sitting here as kind of the gold standard for communication, but there are a lot of things about these other modes that are really wonderful. We've seen, for example, that people whose English is a second language would prefer email rather than video conferencing because they can read and they can take some time in composing their own response and so on. So depending on the communication situation, these different modes have lots of powerful examples. I mean, things like email or chat logs and so on can be archived if you want to go back and look at them later. Mm-hmm. That can be very valuable. Nowadays we can send almost anything by email. Pictures, spreadsheets, all kinds of things that could be useful. It's a channel for sharing things as well as for just kind of direct communication. Mm-hmm. By coordination tools, we mean things that help you to line up what you're going to do. I mean, a very simple one is calendars. Nowadays, there are a lot of calendars that can be shared. Google Calendar is a good example. We use it widely in our lab, and all of our people, postdocs, students, staff are on it. We've worked out who gets what kind of access to what's on the calendar and so on, and who can even write on it. And we'll come back and talk about some of those issues in a little bit, but those, that can be a very useful way of aligning things up. Awareness tools, just knowing who's doing what right now. And there are all kinds of awareness technologies out there that let you have some sense. I mean, are you in today? Are you working? Are you active? Are you, and I notice it like on on Gmail, you can see who's logged in currently. You get a list of things like that. Those are just simple things that can really help when you don't have the person sitting right next to you.
And even simple tools like a spreadsheet. I know for most projects, even the projects like creating some of these online courses, if you just create a line for every task mm-hmm. and a column where you can say, who's this assigned to, what's the current status, when is it due, very simple coordination or actually fairly complex coordination could be done in a very simple tool. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the fact that spreadsheet can be shared suddenly makes things visible.
Right. And a lot of these things can be shared synchronously. I mean, you and I can both edit the same thing at the same time. And that can be very valuable if we're not in the same location. Or even if we are in the same location. I mean, we can be sitting across the table and have a shared document up there and be entering things. And we've made, for example, I was on the executive committee of our professional association, the ACM SIGCHI, and we would take minutes in Google Docs, and there'd be like 15 of us sitting on our table, and there'd be a kind of primary scribe, but the rest of us could add our thoughts, comments, correct things that were put in there. We even had occasions where someone wasn't physically with us, was at home, but they could log in and contribute and see what we're doing and add things and so on. So just these tools are just wonderful ways to mm-hmm. enrich the sharing of information, the sharing of plans, where we're going, all kinds of things.
Right, and this whole issue of data management, of understanding how are we going to put things together. If we're writing a proposal, as all of our groups are, where is the proposal? Is it going to be passed around, or is it going to be co-edited? I know In my teams these days, with students or with other faculty, we tend to draft proposals for the first 80 or so percent inside Google Docs because it's good enough and we can edit in parallel and everybody can see it and you don't have to worry about what happens if two people need to look at it at the same time. And then we do reach a point where we say, you know what, we want this to get polished. And not every proposal needs to ever reach that point, but if we're sending off a proposal that has very strict formatting requirements, if we're about to play the games of looking at line spacing to make everything fit on the page, we'll move into a tool like Microsoft Word and work sequentially. But the ability to comment and share has been extremely valuable.
Yeah. And a lot of these tools have features in to help that, things like comment features that identify who made that comment, or in Word, if I make edits in yours, you see what I've done, and what I've deleted is off on the side, and you can react to that and so on. Very
Absolutely.
useful.
So I should point out that while I believe everybody should have already been introduced to this in our kickoff meetings and materials before that, the IRL portal is very much an attempt to provide people with a set of these tools. The tools that you're going to see here include Google Hangouts, which is this chat facility. It includes some status so you can see the conversations you've had with your team members or others that are supporting you. That includes video conferencing as well as text chat, and it's available for everyone involved. It's also where we provide this resource space as a place for coordination, where you have a team workspace and some awareness of what the most recently updated documents in your team workspace are, so that you know what others in your project are working on as they know what you're working on. And other related tools that are here that include a network where you can look people up and find out about them, but the tools for connecting with others beyond your immediate team for discussions or webinars. We also have access, if you need it, to Google Calendar. We recognize many people have a calendar already, and maintaining multiple calendars is often a real pain. And so we're not expecting people to use that. And we have mailing lists, which are archived, that are done through Google Groups. That will be another facility you have available if that's a useful and helpful way for you to manage your team. So there are lots of facilities that are out there. You're welcome to add others. I, for instance, tend to use the Chrome browser and the Hangouts plugin because it shows me right away all these different people and I can see things popping up on my screen. Others find other ways of doing this, but this allows me to have Hangouts available even when I'm not sitting inside the portal, because my collaborators know they can just message me, and if I'm available and they're able to respond, I will do so. So we did want to spend a couple minutes talking about calendars specifically, because I don't know if you've had the same experience, but for many of the groups I've been part of, the greatest pain that exists is setting up a time to meet.
Yeah.
For all the things we agree on, somehow the only time everybody's available to meet is 7 p.m. Friday night, and nobody wants to.
Right.
And from a technological perspective, each group is going to determine what it wishes to do. If you have somebody in your team that's on Outlook and another person that's on Google and a third person that has paper in their pocket, you're probably not going to have technological support to make these things work. But if you can get to a place where you have some common calendar infrastructure, there's some concepts you should know about that may help you in scheduling more effectively.
Yeah, the question is, if I open up your calendar, what do I see? And the extreme case is you see everything. Certainly Judy and I, who collaborate a lot, that's the kind of access we have to each other's calendar. But we probably wouldn't want to give the same kind of access to our students or postdocs, because on our calendars are things like doctor's appointments and phone calls to children and stuff like that. So there are ways of selectively or even generally masking what's on your calendar. You can just see that a person is busy and not know what they're busy with at that particular time. That still can be useful because you'll see where the open spots are and so on. And by the same token is when I can look at your calendar, can I do anything with it? Can I, if I see, oh, Joe, you're available on Thursday at 2, can I put down a meeting with you? And that's the kind of access you can control. You know, depending on the kind of collaboration you have, that can be something that can be very useful.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has a different way of doing this. What I've found personally effective is that some of my very closest collaborators I will give full access to my calendar to, but mostly I give that access to my assistant. And she has access to a number of people's calendars, and we will delegate to her the task of find a meeting for an hour and a half where we can do things, knowing that she can write into many calendars. My students and more distant collaborators, they can see free and busy times and either send a request, which comes to me as a request and shows up in my calendar as something that I should be aware of if I'm thinking of scheduling something then, or they can contact my assistant if they want something put directly into my calendar. Now, if you have an assistant that does this, this can be really valuable. There are sometimes technological hurdles. If your calendar is on another system, an external person may not be able to get that kind of access. But a large part of this is understanding expectations. It's really an incomplete picture when you look at somebody's calendar. If I see that you're available, and let's say Gary let me see his calendar and I saw that Friday at 7 p.m. is available, frankly, so is Tuesday at 7 a.m. Unless I know whether those are hours that he's readily willing to work, knowing that they're available isn't helpful.
Right.
You know, knowing whether, there's things that I don't put in my calendar, but they're assumptions that I make about how I get scheduled. I'm willing to have a meeting at almost any time between about 7 and 7, but I'm not willing to not have any time for lunch between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. And so if somebody doesn't know me well and they see, oh, you're open from 12 to 1 and busy every other time, they might try to grab that time, which is why I limit access to people who know me well enough to realize, uh-oh, that's his last hour free. We'd better save that so that he has some downtime between meetings. So the notions of privacy, the notions of delegation, frankly, if you don't use a calendar with other people, it takes some practice, it takes some intentional effort, but it can be quite worth it. There are some alternative strategies. For a team project like this, you may decide to go the other direction and say, why don't we set up certain times during the week that we're going to call our RWJF time. We're going to have, Fridays from 9 to 2, and we're going to have Mondays from, 2 to 5, and we're going to call that our time. That might be the time that overlaps the seminars and other things. And our commitment to each other is we'll always be available to collaborate, because if we're not collaborating on things, then we're working on our own part of the project. So some people prefer to carve out when they're positively available rather than have people see when they're not otherwise occupied. Whatever tool you use, you do have to think about how you're going to manage that aspect of collaboration.
And we'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about the communication covenant.
Indeed, now that we have all this technology, we're going to discover technology alone is not the solution. And so we'll be talking about the social dimension to remote collaboration in our next lecture. This has been Lecture 6 of the Technology Supported Collaboration mini course, Technology Support for Collaboration.